Hello. We'd like to look at some application of the trigonometry questions. So in triangle ABC, angle A is 120, B and C is given in this way. We want to find out the area of the triangle. So if you remember the formula, it is area is equal to 1/2 AB sine of C. Now you see that the A, B, and C is all relative. Angle C has to be between two sides. So in this case, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to just I'll try to draw a triangle for you. So assume that a big angle 120. So why don't I call this one as angle A, and I'm going to call this one as angle B and angle C. So if this is 120 degrees, B is opposite of side angle B, that's 10. C is the opposite of angle C, that's 18. I understand it doesn't look like it, but it's okay. We just have drawn this one for our understanding. So area would be equal to 1/2. Two sides, which is what, 10 and 18, times the sine of 120. Then that's all there is. So you just have to put them into calculator. Make sure your mode is in the degrees. Okay, that's good. 0.5 times 10 times 18 times sine of 120. So the value seems to be almost 78. So therefore our answer is choice B. How about the second one? The side of the parallelogram measures 10 and 18, and one angle of the parallelogram measures 46 degrees. You see, one thing about the parallelogram is same thing as two triangles. So therefore all we have to do is area of the parallelogram would be simply AB sine of C. You don't have the 1/2 in front of it. So in this case what we end up getting is 10 times 18 times sine of 46. Rather simple. So here we get 10 times 18 times sine of 46. There it goes, 129, which is choice 3. Alright, 255. And in this case, let us try to draw a parallelogram first. Angle O is 126. I'm going to therefore assume that this is angle O and then this is 126. Then B, F, L, O. Then that's how we can express this. OL is 3.8 and LF, which is this one, is 7.4. Now, since this is 126, then we can figure out this angle. That's 180 minus 126. But in fact, let's try to look at BL. Oh, we didn't consider that one yet. BL is a diagonal. Then I guess I can just assume this one as they are. I don't have to get another angle. And you see 7.4 can be moved onto the other side also, because opposite sides are equal in a parallelogram. Now, then what is the area of the triangle BLF? BLF, oops, that's the other one. I'm going to move this one to this one, and then here I'm going to assume that the angle here is 126 because opposite angles are the same. Then all we have to do is, since I'm looking for that particular triangle, our area still has to have 1/2. A is 3.8, and then B is 7.4 times the angle is sine of 126 degrees. Put that into calculator, and then that's what happens here. 0.5 times 3.8 times 7.4 times sine of 126. So then our answer is 11.4, which is choice 1. 256. Two sides of the parallelograms are 24 and 30, and measure of the angle between these sides of 57. Once again, in this case, we just have to. They told us that the angle between them is 57, so all we have to do is 24 times 30 times sine of 57 degrees. That's all we have to do. Now, then let us put that into calculator. 24 times 30 times sine of 57. Put it to the nearest square of a foot. That means we end up getting 604 square feet. That becomes our answer. 257, the two sides and included angle of the parallelograms are given in this way. So all we have to do is, now we have to find the exact area. So area is 18 times 22 times sine of 60. Well, what is sine of 60? That's radical 3 over 2. So 18 times 22 times radical 3 over 2. Of course, we can cancel out 2, and here we get 11. Then our answer is 198 radical 3. That becomes our exact value of the area. Let's look at 258. In the pictures like this, one of the most important things is finding a common size. You see that this line is the common size between the left triangle and the right triangle. And second thing that I need you to remember is this, that in an exterior angle, in relation to two non-adjacent angles, you see A plus B must be equal to C. Knowing that this is 65, this is 32, what should be the measure of this angle? Applying the same idea. 65 minus 32 becomes 33. And that angle becomes 33 degrees. Now, and then since that's the common side, as you mentioned, this is the side that which we need to figure out, so I'm going to call that as A. Then by the law of sines, we get A over sine of 32 degrees, which is equal to 100 over sine of 33. Now, then all we have to do is just simply multiply by sine of 32 on both sides. So 100 times sine of 32 degrees divided by sine of 33 degrees, and that's the answer we end up getting. So A is equal to 97.297, something like that. Find the height of the tower to the nearest foot. So now I'm going to call this one as X. All I have to do is find the ratio here of the sine of 65 must be equal to X over this side, which is 97.297. Then X then must be equal to sine of 65 and then 97.297. So if I were to go back to the calculator, the value is still there. All I have to do is multiply that by sine of 65. Then our answer is 88.18, so our answer is 88. That becomes our answer. Alright, 259. We have a triangle and A and B, and then angle is likewise. So now, find the measure of the missing angles. So we have A and then angle A. B, we don't have the angle B. So what we can do is we can use the law of sines to figure out the angle B. So here we get A over sine of A must be equal to B over sine of B. Here then we end up getting 12 over sine of 32 degrees is equal to B over, B is in fact equal to 10, and sine of B. Then what we can do is we can cross multiply, then we get 12 sine of B must be equal to 10 sine of 32. And obviously we can divide by 12. Sine of B must be equal to this value, which I'm going to use to calculate. Sine of 32. And then divided by 12. That's the value that we end up getting. 0.4416. Now, but we need to figure out the value of the angle B. So we're going to do second sine. It's because sine of B must be equal to that. We're looking for the answer. And that's equal to 26.2 degrees. So if the one answer is 26.2, and then the other angle is 32 degrees, then yes, we do have the room for the third angle, whatever they might have been. But in this case, let us try to find it. So we get 180 minus 26.2 minus 32. So 121.8. The fact that angle B could have been 26.2, what can be the other value? Because this sign is positive on the first quadrant and also second quadrant. So on the second quadrant, the reference angle can be 26.2. That means what is the measure of actual angle? It would be 180 minus that, which would have been 153.8. But the thing is, if it to be 153.8, that means given the second angle is 32, we cannot have the third angle. So our answer is only this one. 260. How many distinct triangles can be formed from here? So all we have to do is law of sines. So we get 10 over sine of 35, which will be equal to 13 over sine of x. So we can cross multiply, then we get 10 sine of x must be equal to 13 sine of 35. So we can divide by 10. Sine of x must be equal to this value, which we're going to calculate right over here. 13 sine of 35. And then we got to divide it by 10. So our expression is equal to this one. We need then we need to find the second sine to find out the value of x. Alright, the measure of the angle is 48 degrees. So x can be equal to 48 degrees, 0.2. Now, what would be the measure of the second angle? It would be 180 minus this one, which would have been 130, 1.8 degrees. Now, whatever the answer is, even if you, after adding 35, we're going to have the enough room for another angle, and then so is this one. So therefore, our answer is choice 2. Number 261. Given that AB and angle B is given in this way, what type of triangles can be drawn? So let's try to find out the measure of the angle A. And here we get 9 over sine of A must be equal to 10 over sine of 70. So when we cross multiply, we get 9 sine of 70 over 10 must be equal to sine of A. So what do we end up getting? 9 sine of 70, and then divide that by 10. and that's the value that we end up getting. In order for you to do the second sign so that you can figure out the value of the angle. Second sign of the value previously. Alright, so here we get 57, so 58 degrees about that. So one of the angles 70 already given, and this becomes 138, which gives us the room for 42 degrees, so that's okay. How about this second angle? Second angle would have been 180 minus 58, which is 70 was original, and this would have been 122. But if it to be 122, when I add them up, it's already beyond 180, so that cannot work. So this is the only thing that will work. Since none of them is greater than 90, we know that it's an acute triangle, choice 1. Alright, let's look at number 262. So it's given, what are the two possible values of measure of the angle C? So here, we're going to do 59.2 over sine of 74 degrees is equal to 60.3 over sine of measure of the angle C. Alright, so here let us try to see which one would have been our answer. First multiply, once again we get 60.3 60.3 times sine of 74 divided by 59.2. That would be equal to sine of C. After cross multiply them, we would have divided by 59.2, so I already did that. So if you were to calculate this portion, 60.3 times sine of 74 divided by 59.2. So that's the value that we end up getting. If we were to go for second sine of the angle, 78.3. So it can be one of these two, but it cannot be this one, because if it were to be this value, you will realize that with the 74 you will be overflowing right away. So we'll need the correct answer is choice C. So 263, here it goes. In triangle MNP, so let us try to sketch a triangle together. I'm going to say something like this. It's not drawn to scale, of course. M and P. Now, M is 6, N is 10, so this is 10. Now, what we are looking for is the if the measure of the angle M is, so we are looking for two triangles can be constructed. So what if we assume that this is 35 degrees? Then we're going to try to find out this angle first. So that's our first option. We'll see if it's true or not. Let's try to do this one together. So here we get 6 over sine of 35 must be equal to 10 over sine of x. When we cross multiply, we get 6 sine of x, which is equal to 10 sine of 35. Then of course, sine of x must be equal to 10 sine of 35 divided by 6. Putting that into our calculator, making sure that our mode is in the degrees. 10 sine of 35 divide whole thing by 6. We end up getting that value. And to find x, we just have to do the second sign of the answer or the previous value. So then here we end up getting 72 or about 73 degrees. Let me just bring that up. So the x will be about 73 degrees. Then what would be the measure of the other angle? because sine is positive on the second quadrant, so another angle that could have been possible is supplementary to this one, which is 107 degrees. So let's try to look at it. Case number 1 will be, what if the one angle is 35 and the other angle is 73? Wait a minute, does that give us room for the third angle? Yes, it does, because sum of these two is only 108, so it gives us the room for the third angle, so that's okay. How about what if you have to be 107? If you have to be 107 degrees, adding with 35, it becomes 142. Once again, it's not, it doesn't look like 107, but assuming that it is, not drawn to scale. So then 142 still is less than 180, so it gives us room for the third angle. That means both answers are possible. That means n can be two different angles, which creates the two distinct triangles. So first one was correct. And you will realize that if you have to go for second or third or fourth choice, that will not be possible. All right, let's look at 264. So we have this big triangle. I want you to find the measure of angle C, which is this one. How do you find that? Since we are looking at three sides and an angle, we have to use law of cosine. That's right. Then opposite of the angle that which we are looking at is the 13 square. Then the other two will be 14 square plus 15 square minus 2 times 14 times 15 times cosine of x. Now, then if you have to use the calculator here, we get 169 is equal to 196 plus 225 minus, this becomes 420 cosine of x. Then what we can do is we can, from 169, subtracting 196, which is 14 square, minus 225, and then negative 252, so we get negative 252 is equal to negative 420 cosine of x. Now notice that we cannot combine these two things, but we can put these two things into the other side. So now what we have to do is divide by negative 420. Negative 420. Then we get that value, 0.6. Then in order for us to find the value of x, what we have to do is second cosine, because we have cosine here, of the answer. We get 53 degrees. So therefore, our answer is choice 1. All right, let us move on to the next question. Here we have three sides, and then we are looking for the angle. Once again, this has to be law of cosine. Then opposite of angle C, the side C has to be the other side of the equation here. So 7 squared, that's how I'll be starting it. 3 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 3 times 5 times cosine of C. Here we get 49, which is equal to 9, plus 25 minus 30 cosine of C. Of course, we have to subtract 9 and then subtracting 25, then we will end up getting 15, which is equal to negative 30 cosine of C. Dividing by negative 30, you will realize that cosine of C is equal to negative 1/2. Now, you can use the calculator, or you will realize that cosine is negative in the second quadrant with the reference angle of 60, because that's how it gets 1/2. So therefore the answer will be 120, or you could actually put this one into a calculator, as you can see. Second cosine of negative 0.5 gets us 120. Either way, choice 4 would be our answer. All right, number 266. In a triangle, two sides that measures 6 and 10 form an angle measures 80. Okay, find the nearest degree, the measure of the smallest angle in the triangle. So in fact, if I have to draw one triangle here, so you see this can be 80, and this can be 6, and this can be 10. Now, I mean, if you have drawn the picture nicely, you will realize that the opposite of 6 is the smallest angle. But who knows what we can guarantee. So what we like to do right now is this. First, we like to find out the third side first. Then after we finding the third side, then we can find the measure of the angle that's opposite from the smallest side. So let's try to do that. Let me call this one as a c, then we get c squared, which is equal to 6 squared plus 10 squared, minus 2 times 6 times 10 cosine of 80. Alright, then here we get 36 plus 100 minus 120 cosine of 80. So I'm going to put this one into a calculator. Actually, I could have done that from the beginning, but either way, it's fine. So here when I add them up, it becomes 136 minus 120 cosine of 80. And that's the value that we get, but that's c squared. So c would have been square root of that value. Then we get 10.73. So c must be equal to 10.73. Then now to find out, obviously the smallest side is 6, so therefore opposite of that will be the smallest angle. Then we have to use a law of sine to calculate the rest. Here we get 10.73 over sine of 80 must be equal to, let me just call this one as x, 6 over sine of x. Alright, then we can cross multiply, we get 10.73 sine of x must be equal to 6 times sine of 80, and divide by 10.73, then let's see what we end up getting. 6 times sine of 80, and then divide by 10.73, or I can just use this number, which is more precise. Then 0.5506, that's the sine of x. But to find out the value of the angle, we can do second sine of that value right over here. Then 33.4. So x will be equal to, they want us to put to the nearest degree, so our answer will be 33 degrees. Alright, number 267. Two forces of 25 newtons and 85 newtons acting on a body form the angle 55 degrees. Okay, so here we get, if I were to mention that 55 degree angle, this is 25 and this is 85. So I'm just going to make it bigger. Find the magnitude of the resultant force. In order for us to find the resultant force, we need to make a parallelogram. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to bring that up right over here. Bring that up over here. And our resultant the green line will be our resultant. How about that? After drawing the parallelogram. So here we got, this is 25, this is 85. Now notice that this angle is 55. Then what is the consecutive angle? That will be supplementary to 55, which is 125 degrees. So that when they add up to 180. Now first find the magnitude of the resultant force. Then what we can do is, since this is 85, we know that its opposite side will also be 85 in a parallelogram. Then you can find that the resultant, let me call that as r, by law of cosine. So r squared will be equal to 25 squared plus 85 squared minus 2 times 25 times 85 times cosine of 125. So I'm going to put that into a calculator. 25 squared plus 85 squared minus 2 times 25 times 85 and times cosine of 125. Then we get that value, very large value, but we have to take the square root of it. then we get 101. So 101 hundredth of Newton, so therefore we're looking at 101.43. That's basically, N stands for Newton. Find the measure of the find the measure to the nearest degree of the angle formed between the resultant and the larger force. The resultant and then the larger force, which means this angle. So let me call that as x. Then in this case, we have several angles. So what we can do is we can use the law of sines here. Because 25 over sine of x, which is equal to 85, or actually 101, because that's the known pair, 101.43 over sine of 125. Then once again, when we cross multiply, we get 25 sine of 125, which will be equal to 101.43 times sine of x. How do you find x? We got to divide by 101.43. 101.43. Sine of x, what is that equal to? Let's look at it. So 25 times sine of 125 divided by 101.43. And then that's equal to, let me just put it up here in the corner. 0.2019. And then what we want to do is we want to bring this one down. Get the value of x. That means we have to go for second sine. Second sine of the value. We get 11.6. So our answer will be to the nearest degree. So 12 will be our answer. Okay. All right, so that's it. Let's move on to the next question. Number 268. The measure of the angle between the resultant and then two applied force is 60 degrees and then 45 degrees. So for example, what I have to do is, in fact, I have to draw a parallelogram and draw a resultant right over there in the middle. So I don't know exact values, but here we get one force is 60, so I'm going to call it, this one is 60, and this one is 45, or I can call this one as, I can call this one as 45, and that's one force, and that's another force, and while the middle one is the resultant. The magnitude of the resultant is 27 pounds, so this is 27 pounds. Find to the nearest pound the magnitude of each applied forces. In fact, this is 45 degrees, then by the alternate interior angles, this is 45 degrees. Since this is 45, this is 60, you can figure out the third angle. If you subtract from 180 minus 60 minus 45, then we end up getting 75 here. And let me call this one A, and let me call this one as B, which are the two forces here that we are looking at. Then the formula which you can do is 27 over sine of 75 must be equal to A over sine of 45. Then A must be equal to, by cross multiplication, 27, or we can multiply both sides by sine of 45. Then 27 times sine of 45 divide by sine of 75. And putting that into a calculator, 27 times sine of 45, but divide by sine of 75. So that's what we end up getting, which is 19.7. Now to the nearest pound, so this is about 20 pounds then. How about B? B is, so 27 over sine of 75, that stays because opposite of this one. B is opposite of angle 60, so we get B over sine of 60. Then we can multiply left and right side by sine of 60 to cancel out the denominator, where then b is equal to 27 times sine of 60 divided by sine of 75. Then it's basically the same, except we have 60 in place of 45. All right. Then we get 24. Here we get 24.2, so it's about 24 pounds. And that becomes our answer. All right. I'll see you later.